Mother who supported my ex-wife over me and made up false evidence so that I could lose everything in the divorce, reaches out to me 3 years later with a bad news telling me that I was right all along and now needs my help because my ex-wife did this to her. My mom, 55 female, has gotten back in touch with me after 3 years. We were estranged and had no contact during that entire time because of what she did to me 3 years ago. Even back then, I knew she was being duped and taken for a ride. But no matter what I said, she didn't listen to me. Instead, I was turned into the villain and I became the monster she just couldn't trust. And now karma has come to bite her and she has nowhere to run except to me. I, 35 male, got married to my ex-wife Katie, 32 female, 6 years ago. Katie and I met in college but we only got together after she graduated. We didn't have a very long courtship, to be honest. We dated for over a year and decided to get married. Katie has had a hard childhood from what she told me. Her parents died when she was a kid and she was raised by her paternal aunt. The aunt in question was good to her, but her cousins bullied her. She told me she had never snitched on her cousins because she didn't want to cause trouble or make her aunt worry. The only person she was in touch with from her family in adulthood was her aunt. I've met Aunt Rosa a couple of times and she always seemed like a great woman. Katie has a lot of respect for her, but she's also her only family. This is why she got very attached to my mom very quickly. I am one of 3 brothers and my mom had always wanted a daughter. My brothers, they're twins now 31, male. Arthur and Anthony both live abroad. They relocated right after college and have their own lives there. So even though we are close and talk regularly, I was kind of the only one around for mom and so was Katie. To mom, Katie was the daughter she never had. And if I'm being honest, mom and Katie share a heartwarming relationship right off the bat. This was a big reason why I knew so early on that she was the one I was wrong. This was the reason why I knew so early on that she was the one I was wrong. Katie always used to tell me she never had a family, so she was happy that she got to make one with mine. All in all, things were good between us both before and after the wedding. It was a happy relationship by all means and there was never any reason for me to think this would end up being such a disaster. A little over 3 years ago, Katie and I started having problems. They weren't very unusual. I think the stress from COVID and the big lifestyle changes everyone was going through just caused a lot of distress and hostility and that's what I thought. But Katie was festering something even more cruel in her heart. Both of us got snappy with each other. We wouldn't talk much or we'd just drown ourselves in work. This went on for some time and then I realized we needed to talk it out. We did and the situation was resolved, at least for me. The troubles were cropping up because of some small issues and they weren't anything that couldn't be worked on. To my absolute horror, one random day Katie packed her bags and left just like that. No note, nothing. I called her up and it went straight to voicemail. I thought maybe there had been some kind of emergency and that's why she wasn't available. I waited for a couple of hours and called her again. She answered and said she had decided to leave me because I was not right for her and I had been abusing her. She said she didn't want me to contact her anymore and that the only way we could be in touch was through her lawyer. I was completely blindsided. There was absolutely no reason for her to behave this way. There was nothing wrong between us. I was not abusive. Not in the very least. Yes, we had our fair share of disagreements like any normal couple, but that was it. I had never laid a single finger on her. Our finances were separate and we had a joint account where we put in money for utilities and groceries. I really didn't know what had happened to her and I didn't know where she had gone. I tried calling her again and saw that I was blocked. She had blocked me on social media as well. In an instant, we had gone from happily married to having no contact at all. The worst part was that I didn't even know what had gone wrong. I called up my mom and asked if she knew where Katie was. She said she had no idea. She asked what had happened. I told her about it briefly and that was it. The next 2 weeks were absolute torture. There had been no communication from either Katie or her lawyer. I tried calling her here and there but I was blocked. It was extremely mentally harrowing and the foolish part of me felt this was part of a very elaborate prank and that things would go back to normal soon enough. That didn't happen. At the end of 2 weeks, I received communication from her lawyer saying that she was going to charge me with assault and that was cited as the reason for the divorce. My eyes nearly popped out of my head because I hadn't ever in my entire life hit her, even slightly or even in fun. Nothing at all. I had to engage a lawyer of my own and the legal fees nearly bled me dry. My lawyer wasn't worried about the case because he said that Katie didn't have any proof to show that she was assaulted, just like I didn't have any to show that I was. So he said the matter could be dealt with. What neither of us knew, however, was that Katie and my mom were in cahoots the entire time. I don't know what Katie said or did to pull this off but what I saw completely shattered me. During the entire divorce process, my mother had been kind of absent. I thought that was her nature and besides, I didn't want to bother her either. But the reality was quite different. The truth was that Katie had been living with mom the whole time. And all the while, mom knew fully well that I had been looking for Katie and had told her my side of the story. which wasn't much, just that she had randomly left. Even then, she did not think it proper to at least let me know that Katie was safe. She had been harboring Katie all along, and she was the one Katie was using as a witness to the assault that never happened. It was a complete shit show, and at that point I wasn't just confused about my wife leaving me but also felt betrayed by my own mother. Before the case was to go to court, Katie called me up and said that she had an offer to make. She said we needed to meet for it. And when I met her, I saw Mom there. I thought Katie had brought her as a third party to try some sort of mediation, but it was just the two of them hounding me. Katie said that she was willing to drop the charges of assault only if I gave her my house. Otherwise, she would continue with her case and that would be on my record forever. I looked at Mom and she said that she couldn't believe she had raised a man who would hit his own wife. I told Mom that Katie was lying and that I had not done anything, and that's when Katie came out with proof. Images of bruises, a busted lip, screenshots of me threatening her when none of that had actually happened. It all looked so real. It felt as though maybe it had happened and I'd somehow forgotten. I think that was their motive as well. They wanted to gaslight me into believing that I had done something to make me admit to my crimes. However, I stood my ground and so did Katie. She said the house was the only thing she was willing to settle on. It took a lot of persuasion and begging on my part for her to agree to a large monthly alimony until she got remarried. She wasn't particularly happy about it, but the amount was huge and I think that shut her up. Ever since then, I've had sleepless nights over what went wrong. Thankfully, I had my brother who flew down and spent time with me. They were the ones who stood by me through thick and thin. They told me that they had complete faith in me and knew I could never do something like that. I have been paying a little less than half of my original paycheck to Katie ever since, and I have had no contact with her. 6 months ago I found out through the grapevine that Katie had actually remarried. Our agreement was that I would pay her until she got married, and she had completely violated that agreement. The agreement was formal, drafted after that meeting by our lawyers and categorically signed by both of us. Since there was a violation, I could have actually pursued legal action, but I did not want more drama. I just had my lawyer communicate that since my obligations to her were over, there would be no more payments. Thankfully, her lawyer did not press for more, and I thought the matter was settled just as this part of my life kind of resolved itself. I got a promotion at work and a huge bump in my salary. I had more disposable income than ever and was enjoying my life with it. I still have a lot of mental issues because of what I had to face, but I know now that I'm in a better place. To my shock, last night I had a visitor, my mom. When I saw her at the door, I slammed it shut in her face. I didn't want to talk to her, not after what she had done. Not after how she had believed and supported Katie over me despite knowing the kind of man I am. I don't have an issue with her choosing Katie over me because Katie isn't biologically related to her and I am. I know she loved both of us a lot and equally. My issue with her was that she knew I wasn't the kind of person who would do something like this, yet she still chose to believe Katie over me. It was like I didn't even have a chance. She never gave me the opportunity to explain. She never tried to understand what was happening. She trusted every word that came out of Katie's mouth, and to her that was gospel. So now I had no space or need for her in my life. I was done. She was begging through the door, telling me that she had made a huge mistake and wanted me to forgive her. She said she just wanted to clear things out. I shouted that I was never given the opportunity to clear things out, so why should she be? She said that she wouldn't leave my doorstep until I let her in and listened to what she had to say. I thought she was bluffing and would leave after a while, but nope. She sat there for a good 3 hours before I finally let her in, and then started the big reveal of what had actually happened. How Katie had manipulated her through and finally thrown her out after she had used her to the last drop. The day Katie left home, Mom told me she actually went straight to her place. Katie begged Mom not to involve me, showing up covered in bruises. She told Mom I had been abusive towards her for some time and needed to get away. Katie said she didn't trust anyone but Mom, and Mom, of course, believed her. She told Katie she could stay there as long as she needed. Mom said she knew I couldn't do something like that, but seeing those bruises threw her off guard, and she said she couldn't help but believe Katie. I told her I hadn't done anything and that I'd never abused her, and Mom now says she believes me. I asked her why she never tried to get my side of the story, and she said Katie's story was so convincing. Katie apparently poured her heart out, and the whole story was so gut-wrenching that Mom was disgusted with me. The problem was she had believed Katie completely without a single shred of doubt, and it hadn't even occurred to her to give me a chance. Katie was sure from the beginning that she would go for a divorce and press charges. Mom said she didn't discourage her. No woman would have. However, after a couple of days, Katie broke down, saying she had only a few photos of the times I'd allegedly hit her with no other evidence. Katie told Mom she wanted me to be punished for what I'd done but felt helpless about bringing me to justice. That's when they decided to fabricate evidence against me. Mom was already convinced Katie was telling the truth, so it was easy for Katie to manipulate her. That's how they made all those screenshots that never even existed. Mom says Katie completely blinded her against me. She never could have imagined Katie would turn out to be so diabolical. I asked Mom what made her change her mind. And she said it all started about 6 months ago when she learned about Katie's new marriage and found out I'd stopped sending her money. Mom told me she had even attended Katie's second wedding. Katie's new husband thanked Mom for standing up to me on her behalf. It was like Katie had become family to her. But when the money from me stopped, Katie came running back to Mom accusing her of having told me about the marriage and ruining her life. Mom felt terrible about Katie having less money than before, so she bent over backward to help her. But gradually, she began to see a pattern and she realized Katie might not be the saint she had pretended to be. Mom started questioning Katie about the divorce, the abuse, everything. My mom has an elephant's memory. She does not forget anything she's been told. But Katie did. She mixed up the details, dates, events because she hadn't needed to tell that lie in a long time. And that's when Mom realized Katie was probably lying. But again, instead of coming to me first, she staged a confrontation with Katie herself. Katie tried defending herself, but when she realized her little scheme was caught, she started laughing and admitted the whole thing was a lie. Katie said she couldn't believe Mom could be so easily manipulated against her own son. Not that she was complaining. She said she did it because she was having an affair with her now husband who also thought I was abusive. She just needed to get away and be with him, which would guarantee her happiness. So she hatched this elaborate plan and even roped Mom in so that no one would suspect her lying. I couldn't believe my ears. 3 years after everything happened, 3 years after I'd moved on with my life, all of this was coming back to me and I don't even know why. Mom said she was incredibly sorry and that she would do anything for me to forgive her, but I don't know. I told her I felt bad she was conned by Katie this way, but I also felt bad for myself because I had to go through the worst kind of allegations alone. All while my mother was helping produce evidence for them. I told her this whole thing was a nightmare and that I didn't have it in me to forgive her. I had to fight tooth and nail and completely ran out of money because of what happened and I'm just done with the drama. She seemed to understand and said she didn't want anything from me, just my forgiveness, and hoped that one day I would be willing to talk to her again. But I don't know, Mom. I don't think that day is coming anytime soon and that's all because of you. Update 1. A lot of the comments suggest that I go to her husband and tell him the truth. In another life and another time, maybe I would have, but now I don't think so. I don't want any more drama in my life. Her husband is welcome to her mess and I can only pray the poor man doesn't have to face this side of her. I had thought that taking the route to peace would result in no more drama, but I guess I was wrong. Apparently Katie stole Mom's cards or Mom had given them to her to use and now Katie has withdrawn all the money from Mom's account. At this point, Mom is flat broke. Arthur called me up and told me what happened and he asked me to help Mom out until he could come back. I asked why she didn't tell me herself since I live the closest and he said she thought I didn't want to talk to her anymore. I don't, but that's beside the point. I got in touch with Mom and she was a mess. She said she had given her cards to Katie and then forgotten about it and Katie used to withdraw money for her. Now, she feels maybe Katie had been siphoning money off of her even before the fallout between them. After raising 3 kids, I really don't understand how my mom could have been so gullible. She was in pretty bad shape and we decided to press charges against Katie. I don't think we can recover all the money, but we hope at least some of it can be. I don't know why Katie assumed we wouldn't go the legal route or if she somehow covered her tracks. I've been in touch with a lawyer and he said we have a strong case. But ultimately it depends on the judge, mainly because Mom gave her the cards voluntarily and Katie might claim she was only doing what Mom asked her to do. Let's see what happens. I do not want to be dealing with this, but I know this money is important for my mother and she has no one else to go to for help. Arthur wants to fly down, but I told him I've got it handled. He's welcome if he wants to come, but I don't want him to disrupt his life over this. It's enough that one of us has to get screwed over. I'd much rather it be me than my brothers. I've already been through so much. I'm kind of used to it. Update 2. Things have been intense. They have also gotten way more out of hand than I ever imagined. We served the papers to Katie and surprisingly didn't get a response for almost 2 weeks. Then I got an email from her husband, Mark, asking for a private meeting. I was unsure about meeting him because I thought he might bring Katie along. My lawyer said there was no harm in meeting him as long as I made it clear I didn't want Katie there or I'd leave. That's what I decided to do and we met up. I had always assumed the worst of him ever since I found out Katie had been cheating on me with him. I don't love Katie anymore, but it still stings that this relationship and all the harassment I had to face was because my wife was cheating on me. It rubbed me the wrong way and I was already in the mood when I went to meet him. The meeting, however, was nice. Honestly, I don't have a single bad thing to say about the guy. He seemed really sweet, though I know Katie had seemed sweet too, and he could turn out to be just like her. Still, I couldn't help but like him. I asked him why he wanted to meet me and he said it wasn't about the legal notice at all. He said that was a battle Katie and I had to fight, and he'd always been under the impression that Mom had actually left all that money for Katie. I laughed not at him but at what he said. I asked why a healthy 55-year-old woman would leave her money for someone. She might have willed it to her. She hasn't. After which, Katie might have had a claim on it. He said that's exactly what felt wrong to him, but he never questioned it. But when he saw the legal notice, he thought he ought to get in touch with me. He said he could never really understand what led to the rift between Katie and my mom because they seemed so close. He also said that after Mom supported Katie through her divorce and everything, coming back to me just seemed fishy. He said he just wanted to nip this in the bud and find out what had really happened. I hesitated for a while because, to be frank, I didn't think he'd believe me. Not that I blame him. Heck, I wouldn't have believed me. But I think I gave in because he had a right to know. So I told him everything from start to finish about what had actually happened. He was quiet the entire time, and then he randomly started asking me a lot of questions. I answered as best I could because I didn't remember every detail of our marriage down to the exact date anymore. I could feel his soul leaving his body when he realized what a game Katie had played. I also told him that Mom had confessed she fabricated all that evidence. Then he told me their affair had been going on for 6 months before Katie left the house, and she started it by pretending to be a victim of domestic and financial abuse from me. That was how they started talking, and he felt she was trapped in a bad marriage with a bad man and that he somehow had to save her. He said she kept the ruse going for a long time but never gave him specific details, especially after they got married. She always said she didn't want to talk about it. She basically played both him and me, and he was mortified. I sympathized with him because 3 years ago, I'd been in the same shoes and I saw my life change in minutes. He thanked me and said he'd be in touch, but also told me never to reveal to Katie that we had met. I told him I had no contact with Katie anymore and only the case would force us into some kind of contact. It was an intense meeting and I don't know what to think anymore. I don't know what will become of the case, but I can only hope the man and the money are safe from her. Update 3. We won the case. I'm sorry I haven't been giving updates or details of the case. My lawyer advised me not to share confidential information, and I've been following her advice and instructions to a T. All in all, Katie is in for a lot of trouble. She has to pay back all the money, and this will be the first misdemeanor on her record. Unfortunately, she won't be jailed for what she's done. But well, a win is a win. On the personal front, Mark, her husband, has filed for divorce. I don't know whether he's told her that he knows the truth or not, but I'm assuming he hasn't. Because if he had, I'm sure she would have tried to stir up trouble in my life again. That hasn't happened so far, so I think he's kept quiet and is choosing to quietly exit the relationship. Good for him. He's smarter than I was. We're actually meeting up for drinks later this week. It's funny how I've made a friend, I think, in the most unexpected of circumstances. It's not ideal, but it is what it is. As for my mom, I am extremely low contact with her. I helped her out because I couldn't see her lose all her money. Other than that, I'm done with her. Though she had hoped the entire case situation might bring us closer, she hasn't been pushy since the judgment was announced. I think I can finally lay this episode of my life to rest and be free from the toxicity that it brought.